Hi everyone, so today the first thing we're going to do is go over our homework from last night. So you had to factor each expression and fill out the chart as part of your answer. So what we have to go ahead and do is write down the factors of 10 and then figure out their sum, because remember these are two different signs here. So our one number is going to be positive and one number is going to be negative. So let's start by listing the factors of 10. So we have 1 and 10, or we have 1 and negative 10. And what's the sum of 1 and negative 10? Negative 9. We can have negative 1 and positive 10. What's that sum? 9. We can have 2 and negative 5, and their sum is negative 3. And we can also have negative 2 and 5. What's that sum? Positive 3. Okay, so now that we've gotten to this point, we wanted to have what group of these factors has the sum of positive 3? So we find it, it's right over here. So 2 and negative 2 and 5 have a sum of 3. So what we're going to do now is one of these parentheses is going to have x minus 2, and the other parenthesis is going to have x plus 5. Let's try the next one. So both negative, so we need a positive number and a negative number that multiply to negative 12 but add up to what? Negative 4. So let's start off. So we have 1 and negative 12. That sum is negative 11. We can have negative 1 and 12. What's that sum? 11. We could also have 2 and negative 6. What's that sum? Negative 4. We can also have negative 2 and 6. What's that sum? Positive 4. What else can we have? We can have 3 and negative 4, and that sum is negative 1. Okay, so I think we kind of listed all the factors over here. We can also have negative 3 and positive 4, but we already know that would be, well, a positive 1, and we're looking for what? A negative 4. So out of these factors that I have listed here, which of those adds up to a sum of negative 4? So we have 2 and negative 6. So now we're going to use 2 and negative 6 in our parentheses. So we're going to have x plus 2 and x minus 6. And this right here is our factored form. Now in this next one, I asked you, what is my error in my factored form? So my original problem was x squared plus 2x plus 80. Okay, so I have this factored form here, x plus 8 and x minus 10. Now if I wanted to check it to see what I did wrong, I would just go ahead and FOIL. So I would do x times x, and I would get x squared. X times negative 10 gives me negative 10x. X plus, or 8 times x would give me plus 8x. And negative, or 8 times negative 10 gives me negative 80. Go ahead and combine these like terms, and I get x squared minus 2x minus 80. Does this right here match the original problem? No. Why? Because this is negative 2, and up here in the original problem it's what? Positive 2. So what would happen if I did switch the signs of the numbers? So what if instead of positive 8 I have negative 8, and instead of negative 10 I have positive 10? So let's go ahead and factor those, or multiply those out. So I have x times x, which gives me x squared. x times 10, which gives me plus 10x. Negative 8 times x, which gives me minus 8x. And negative 8 times positive 10 gives me negative 80. Okay, now what do? Go ahead and combine my like terms. X squared, positive 10x minus 8x. Positive 10 minus 8, what does that give me? Plus 2x minus 80. So now we know. Does this now match up to what was in the original problem? Yes. So my mistake was that I needed to have x minus 8 times x plus 10. And how about this problem? A rectangular pool has an area of x squared plus 9x minus 36. I want to know, what are the possible dimensions of the pool and use factoring to solve? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make myself a little table and I'm going to start writing the factors of 36. How do I get negative 36? 1 and negative 36. What's their sum? Negative 35. What do I need them to add up to? They need to add up to 9x, right? Or to 9. If I already see that 1 plus negative 36 is going to give me positive 35 or negative 35, if I went ahead and switched up, if I did negative 1 plus positive 36, I'd get a positive 35. So that's why I'm going to not include the negative 1 and positive 36 as a factor. Let's go ahead and what else can we try? 2 and negative 18. So if I add 2 plus negative 18, I'm going to get negative 16. Well, I can also do what? Negative 2 and positive 18, but that would just give me what? Positive 16 in the end. So I don't have to go ahead and do that one. How about 3 and negative 12? That gives me 36 when I multiply them. Now what happens if I add them? Positive 3 plus negative 12 gives me negative 9. Ooh, okay, I got a 9. But what do I want? A positive 9. So let's now try negative 3 and positive 12. Negative 3 plus 12 gives me positive 9. So now I know that this is going to be my factors that I'm going to use. So my factored form is going to be x minus 3 times x plus 12. Okay, so the next thing we're going to start on now is we're going to do something called factoring by grouping. So this right now, this is kind of like, we're going to jump a little ahead. This is going to be a lot easier for the lesson we're going to learn tomorrow. So I'm doing this to help benefit you guys to understand how we're going to be factoring tomorrow. So when we factor by grouping, we're going to group the terms with common factors before factoring. So I'm going to explain to you what that means in just a second. We're going to create smaller groups within the problem. This is usually done by grouping the first two terms together and then the last two terms together. So when you see factoring by grouping, you're basically going to have 4 terms. What you want to do is basically chop the problem in half. Do the first 2 by itself and then the last 2 by itself. Then we're going to factor out the greatest common factor from each of the 2 groups. When we do that, you want to have what I like to call twin parentheses. You want what's inside the parentheses to be identical in each of those problems. So let me explain this to you. So the first problem, we have x cubed minus 5x squared plus 3x minus 15. So do we see how it's 4 terms, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. What we're going to do is break the problem into half. So we're going to put a little box around the first 2 terms. So a box goes around x to the third minus 5x squared. And then a box is going to go around the last two terms with the sign in front of them. So it's plus 3x minus 15. Okay, once we get to this point, what we're going to do is look for the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor in this first box over here is x squared. Now, we did the lesson last week on factoring. If we need to go back and review that, I can repost that video as well. So we're going to factor out the greatest common factor is x squared. Over here, in this white box over here, we need to figure out the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor between 3x and 3x minus 15 is a positive 3. So we're going to go back to this pink box over here. So if our greatest common factor was x squared, so we're going to write x squared on the outside. How do we get x cubed back? We got to multiply x squared by x. How do we get minus 5x squared back? We got to multiply x squared by minus 5. Okay, we factored out for this side of the problem. Now let's go try this one. If the greatest common factor between 3x and negative 15 was positive 3, we're going to take our 3 and write it on the outside of a parenthesis. How are we going to get positive 3x back? We got to multiply 3 by x. And how are we going to get negative 15 back? 3 by minus 5, or negative 5. So now we have this setup over here and this setup over here. Do we notice how we have in our two sets of parentheses, we have what we call the twins? Well, these right here, that's going to be one of the factors, or one of the factored form. And then this x squared and this 3, we're going to group together. So it's going to be x squared plus 3 times x minus 5. If we wanted to go ahead and multiply all of this out, we would get this answer right up here back. So what we did was you find the greatest common factor, and then we factor the first half of the problem. Find the greatest common factor for this second half over here, and then do the same thing. Factor out. Then we should always have the parentheses should always be matching to each other. And when they are, we're going to take that one set of parentheses and put it over here, and then we're going to take whatever's on the outside of the parenthesis and group them together. That's going to be your other parenthesis for the factored form. Now over here, do you see how it's just a 3? Well, over here I wrote plus 3. If there's no sign on the outside, we put a positive. Let's try the next one. We have 5x squared plus 1x plus 10x plus 2. First things first, break it up into two separate problems. We have 5x squared plus 1x in the pink box, and then we have plus 10x plus 2 in the white box. First thing, what are we going to do? Find the greatest common factor. What's the greatest common factor between 5x squared and 1x? The greatest common factor is x. So let's go ahead and do the one in the white box. What's the greatest common factor between positive 10x and 2? The greatest common factor is positive 2. So you could start going ahead and writing the positive and negatives if that's going to help you to see the sign. So next thing, let's go back and work with this box. If the greatest common factor was x, how are we going to get 5x squared back? We got to multiply x by 5x. How are we going to get 1x back? We're going to multiply x by 1. Okay, so now we're done. This side of the problem's already factored. Let's move on to this side. The greatest common factor between these two was 2. How are we going to get 10x back? We got to multiply 2 by 5x. And how are we going to get 2 back? 2 times 1. So we have our twins here. So we're going to take this x and this 2 right here, group those together. So we have x plus 2 times, and then over here, 5x plus 1. Let's try this one. 3x squared plus xy minus 12x minus 4y. Okay, same thing. Let's separate them, group them together, or group them. So we have 3x squared plus xy in one group, And then we have minus 12x minus 4y in the other group. Let's find the greatest common factor for the pink box. And the greatest common factor between 3x squared and xy is x. And then for the white box, let's find the greatest common factor between negative 12x and negative 4y. Greatest common factor is negative 4. Now what we're going to do is work our way backwards. Now we're going to factor. If our greatest common factor is x, how am I going to get 3x squared back? I got to multiply by 3x. How am I going to get xy back? I got to multiply x by y. This side of the problem is now completely factored. And then let's work with this one. If the greatest common factor is negative 4, we put our negative 4 on the outside of the parenthesis. How do we get negative 12x back? We got to multiply by 3x. And how are we going to get negative 4y? We got to multiply by positive y. Notice again we have 3x plus y and 3x plus y. So we highlight them so that way we know they're the same. We're only going to use it once though. So now we're going to group the x and the negative 4. So one parenthesis is going to have x minus 4 and the other parenthesis is going to have 3x plus y. Let's try this one. X squared minus 2x plus 5x minus 10. Break them up into two separate boxes. So we have x squared minus 2x and positive 5x minus 10. Let's find the greatest common factor between x squared minus 2x. Greatest common factor is x. And let's work with this white box over here. 5x minus 10. Greatest common factor between the two is 5. So let's go back to working over here now. If the greatest common factor was x, we're going to write x on the outside, open up a parenthesis. How are we going to get x back? We're going to have to multiply by x. And then how do we get negative 2x back? We got to multiply x by negative 2. Done with this side. Let's try this side now. If our greatest common factor was 5, let's put the 5 on the outside of the parenthesis, open it back up. How do we get 5x? We got to multiply by x. And how do we get 10? We got to multiply by negative 2. So we have our set of twins here. And then we're just going to go ahead and group the x and the 5 together. So we have x plus 5 times x minus 2. As always, here is our pet of the day. This is Mrs. Morano's cat. This is Sugar Plum. Sugar Plum's name sounds sweeter than she actually is. Sugar Plum loves to eat chicken and cheese. Some daily reminders. Your homework is assigned daily and is posted on Google Classroom and Plus Portals. Your homework is to be uploaded to Google Classroom or emailed to me before the start of class. If I don't get it before, it's considered late and you will not receive full credit. If you have any questions, please be sure to send me an email. Your next quiz will be next week. Have a great day, guys.